The story of Elena and her children Carlos, Luis, and Ana. Have you ever stopped to consider whether your generosity might actually be harming your children? Picture this: you're about to retire, and all you want is to ensure your kids have a bright future. But what if I told you there are 7 things you should never give them, for their own well-being? The final revelation will surprise you. Before we dive in, I urge you to pay close attention to this story, as it holds a crucial lesson that will make the message of this video clear. Elena, a newly retired woman, was overjoyed at the thought of helping her children. She planned to gift them money and property, fully convinced this would secure their futures. Sound familiar? But just before Elena could act on her plan, her wise neighbor, Don Javier, gently cautioned her. "Elena," he said calmly, "sometimes giving too much is like overwatering a plant. Instead of helping it flourish, you might end up suffocating it." Could it be that Elena's generosity was on the verge of becoming a trap for her children? Before we continue, if you find value in these videos, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. 1. The danger of limitless giving. With a heart full of love and the best intentions, Elena decided to give Carlos a large sum of money after her retirement. "Now you can finally chase your dreams," she told him enthusiastically. But what Elena didn't realize was that this well-meaning gesture would set off a chain of events that would dramatically alter Carlos's life. Carlos, thrilled by this unexpected stroke of luck, decided to quit his job. Why keep working, he thought. Without knowing it, he had fallen into the trap of easy money. What seemed like a blessing quickly morphed into a curse. This is a phenomenon known as affluenza, or the rich heir syndrome, and it's more common than you might think. In fact, it's so prevalent that psychologists have coined a term for it. Dr. Roy Williams, author of Preparing Your Kids for $1 Billion, notes that 70% of wealthy families lose their fortunes by the 2nd generation, and by the 3rd, 90% of it is gone. But why does this happen? Imagine you were handed a huge cake every day. At first you'd be overjoyed. But over time, not only would you lose interest in baking, but you'd probably end up with some serious health issues too. Money works in much the same way. The renowned psychologist Abraham Maslow once said, "If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail." In Carlos's case, money became his new hammer, and suddenly, every issue seemed solvable with cash. He lost the ability to tackle challenges, to grow, and to find fulfillment through personal achievement. But all hope wasn't lost. As the saying goes, it's better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Elena could have taken another path. She could have taught Carlos financial literacy, encouraged his entrepreneurial spirit, or even partnered with him in a business venture. These alternatives would not only have offered financial help but also imparted valuable life lessons. The philosopher Seneca, over 2,000 years ago, warned of the perils of wealth without wisdom. "It is not the man who has little, but the one who craves more, who is truly poor," he said. Carlos had plenty, but by losing his sense of purpose, he found himself poorer than ever. Before you give your children a grand gift, take a moment to ask yourself, am I providing them with a safety net or trapping them in a gilded cage? Am I giving them a springboard for their dreams or a cozy couch where their ambitions will sleep? Remember, the true gift isn't the money itself, it's the tools to create, multiply, and manage it wisely. As the business tycoon Warren Buffett once said, "I will leave enough money for my children to do something, but not so much that they do nothing." 2. The trap of gifting property. Imagine this: Elena, freshly retired and full of love, decides to surprise her daughter, Ana, with a seemingly perfect gift. "Sweetheart, I'm giving you our summer house by the beach. It's yours now," she says, her heart swelling with pride. Ana, thrilled by the gesture, already envisions herself spending long, lazy afternoons gazing out at the ocean. But what if this fairy tale gift turns into a financial nightmare? As the philosopher Seneca once remarked, "He is not poor who has little, but he who craves much." Little did Ana know, she was about to wish she had never received that generous offer. Elena hadn't factored in the hidden costs of owning that beachfront property: annual taxes, ongoing maintenance, and surprise repairs. What started as a dream soon became a financial black hole, swallowing up Ana's savings faster than she could replenish them. But hold on, this isn't as uncommon as it seems. A recent study found that inherited properties often become the source of family conflict. Sound familiar? Well, brace yourself because the story of the Martinez family is going to leave you speechless. The Martinez family had always been close-knit. That is, until their grandfather passed away and left them his old house. What seemed like a loving gesture soon became a battleground. Who would foot the bill for repairs? Who would get to live there? Should they sell it? What used to be joyful family gatherings quickly turned into heated arguments, complete with shouting and slammed doors. In the end, the house that was meant to bring them together ended up tearing them apart. Now, don't get me wrong, gifting property isn't inherently a bad thing. The real issue arises when you don't consider the full picture. As psychologist Abraham Maslow once said, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. In this case, the hammer is good intentions, but the problem is far more complex than a single nail. The key is financial education. Before handing over a property, it's crucial to ensure the recipient is ready for the responsibility. Do they have the resources to maintain it? Do they understand the obligations that come with property ownership? Have they taken into account the potential tax burden? Let's return to Elena and Anna for a moment. Imagine if, instead of simply giving the house away, Elena had involved Anna in the decision-making process. Together, they could have explored various options, selling the house and splitting the proceeds, creating a fund for its upkeep, or even turning it into a family vacation rental. Through open communication and collaborative planning, what could have been a financial disaster might have blossomed into a meaningful opportunity for family growth. As the philosopher Epictetus wisely said, wealth does not consist in having great possessions, but in having few needs. Perhaps the real gift isn't the property itself, but the lessons in financial responsibility and family unity that can emerge from situations like these. 3. The risk of solving every problem. Let's talk about Elena's story. With the best of intentions, Elena has always been there to fix every problem her children faced. From small school squabbles to major life decisions, she was the superhero who swooped in to save the day. Sounds great, right? But as the old saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It turns out there's a name for this helicopter parenting, and no, it's not about parents hovering around in actual helicopters, although that would be quite the sight. Rather, it refers to parents who constantly hover over their children's lives, ready to jump in and fix any issue that comes up. But what's wrong with being so caring and attentive? Picture this: you're at the gym with a personal trainer. Instead of teaching you how to lift weights, your trainer lifts them for you. Do you think you'd build any muscle? Of course not. Similarly, when we solve all our children's problems, we rob them of the chance to develop their emotional resilience and problem-solving skills. A study by the University of Florida uncovered something interesting: young adults raised by overprotective parents tend to struggle more with handling the everyday pressures of life. It's as if we gave them a map to navigate life, but took away their compass. Let's return to Elena. She began to notice something troubling Carlos. Her eldest son seemed incapable of making decisions without her. Whenever he faced a challenge at work, he would call Elena in a panic. Anna, on the other hand, avoided difficult situations altogether. The thought of moving out or looking for a new job overwhelmed her with fear. And Luis, the youngest, observed how his mother managed Carlos' crises. Although he tried to be more independent, Elena still found ways to help, even when he didn't ask. Psychologist Alfredo Oliva explains that overprotection can look like love, but it's actually driven by fear that our children will suffer, fear that they will fail, but failure and hardship are essential for growth and learning. So what's the solution? Should we let our children crash into every obstacle? Not quite. The key lies in balance. As philosopher Khalil Gibran wisely said, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. Our role is to support them when they need us, but not overstep. It's like teaching a child to ride a bike. First you use training wheels, then you hold the seat, and eventually you let go. Yes, they might fall a few times, but it's those falls that teach them to balance on their own. Elena decided to take a step back. The next time Carlos called her with a work problem, instead of giving him the answer, she asked, "What do you think you should do with Anna?" She encouraged her to face small challenges, celebrating each success along the way. And as for Luis, well, we'll see what happens with him soon. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe with the bell so you never miss another story. If this content resonates with you, comment below. I love these stories. And let me know what you'd like to see in the next videos. I read every single comment. Let's keep learning and improving together. Now, get ready to explore how the desire to help can sometimes turn into an invisible obstacle. 4. The temptation of unsolicited advice. Elena, our protagonist, found herself caught in this trap without even realizing it. After retiring, she believed she had a lifetime of wisdom to share with her children. What she didn't expect was the surprising response. Imagine the scene. Elena, with the best intentions, constantly giving advice on every aspect of their lives. Luis, you should really change jobs. Anna, why don't you move closer? Carlos, that haircut just doesn't suit you. Little by little, these remarks built an invisible wall between her and her kids. But why is unsolicited advice often so counterproductive? According to psychologist Dr. Maria Martinez, when we offer advice without being asked, we unintentionally send the message that we don't trust the other person's ability to make their own decisions. Ouch, not exactly what Elena intended to communicate, was it? The final straw came when her youngest, Luis, began distancing himself. He was tired of constantly being told how to live his life. Anna, the middle child, started dodging her mother's calls, while Carlos, the eldest, responded with nothing more than grunts and monosyllables whenever Elena made suggestions. Elena finally realized something was wrong when she organized a family dinner and only Carlos showed up. He admitted that his siblings were avoiding these gatherings because they were tired of being bombarded with advice. It was a harsh wake-up call. But all hope wasn't lost. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgment of things." Elena decided to apply this wisdom to her own situation. She began practicing the art of non-judgmental listening. Instead of jumping in with advice every time her children shared something, she started asking questions. How do you feel about that? What do you think would be best for you? To her surprise, her children started reaching out to her more often. A study from the University of Michigan showed that young adults whose parents respected their autonomy reported higher levels of satisfaction in their family relationships. Elena was clearly on the right path. The key is finding the balance between being available for your children and respecting their ability to make their own decisions. As comedian Jerry Seinfeld once joked, sometimes the best advice is no advice at all. Elena learned that her children didn't need a constant instruction manual, but rather a listening ear and a supportive shoulder when they needed it. She began to enjoy deeper, more meaningful conversations with her children, free from the pressure to fix everything. So, have you ever wondered if your well-meaning words might actually be creating an invisible rift between you and your loved ones? 5. The mistake of comparing children. Imagine each comparison as a tiny stone, gradually building an invisible wall between siblings without anyone even noticing. Elena, our retired protagonist, found herself in a situation many parents can relate to. With her 3 children, Luis, Anna, and Carlos, she believed she was distributing her love and attention equally. Yet, without realizing it, she had fallen into the trap of making comparisons. Luis, why can't you be more organized like Anna? Elena would often say. Or to Carlos, your older brother already had a job at your age. These seemingly harmless remarks were quietly sowing seeds of resentment and rivalry among her children. Psychologist Abraham Maslow once said, "The healthiest way to raise a child is to help them develop their individuality unknowingly." Elena was doing the opposite. Her constant comparisons were chipping away at her children's self-esteem and creating tensions within the family dynamic. One day, during a family dinner, the atmosphere turned heavy. Elena had once again compared her children, and this time, Luis snapped. "It's always the same," he blurted out. "Anna's the perfect one. Carlos is the successful one. And what about me? The family loser." The silence that followed was deafening. That moment was a wake-up call for Elena. She realized her words, intended to motivate, were actually hurting her children deeply. How many parents, she wondered, fall into this same trap without realizing it? A study from the University of Illinois revealed that children who are frequently compared to their siblings often struggle with greater anxiety and self-esteem issues as adults. Each comparison, in effect, becomes a brick in an invisible wall separating siblings. Dr. Alfredo Oliva, an expert in developmental psychology, explains that comparisons between siblings can have long-lasting, devastating effects. Not only do they damage sibling relationships, but they also distort how children see themselves. Determined to change, Elena sought professional guidance. She learned that each child is unique, with their own strengths and weaknesses. Instead of comparing, she began to practice what psychologists call specific praise, focusing on each child's individual achievements without holding them up against one another. To Carlos, she would now say, "I'm so proud of how you persevered in finding a job you love." To Anna, "Your ability to organize your time is truly admirable." And to Louise, "Your creativity in the kitchen amazes me every day." These personalized and specific comments began to heal the wounds that had been festering for years. The change didn't happen overnight, but gradually Elena noticed a shift in the atmosphere at home. The siblings began to support one another rather than compete. Family dinners were soon filled with laughter instead of tension. As the Roman philosopher Seneca wisely said, "Treat your inferiors as you would want your superiors to treat you." Elena took this wisdom to heart, applying it to her parenting by treating each child with the respect and individuality they deserved. The lesson is clear: valuing each child's uniqueness not only boosts their self-esteem, but also fosters a more harmonious and supportive family environment. It's like tending to a garden. Each flower needs its own space and care to truly bloom in all its splendor. 6. The trap of exaggerated expectations. Continuing on this journey, let's talk about the danger of exaggerated expectations. Expectations are like balloons. If you overinflate them, they're bound to pop. Elena, our well-meaning retiree, thought she was doing the right thing by dreaming big for her children: Louise, the frustrated artist; Anna, the future lawyer; and Carlos, the soon-to-be successful entrepreneur. But what happens when those dreams turn into a heavy burden for the children? Imagine for a moment that you're Louise. Since childhood, your mother has repeatedly told you that you have a gift for painting. You'll be the next Picasso, she would say. But what if your true passion is music? With every brushstroke, you feel the weight of expectations you're failing to meet. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person may be too tight for another, and he couldn't have been more right." Elena's well-intentioned expectations were squeezing the life out of her children's dreams, suffocating them. Recent studies have revealed something surprising: young people facing unreasonable expectations are more likely to suffer from high levels of stress and anxiety. It's as though we're asking them to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. Impossible and dangerous. Anna, Elena's perfect daughter, started experiencing panic attacks before each exam. The pressure to be the best lawyer, even before she'd set foot in law school, was overwhelming her. Sound familiar? Maybe you're not exactly like Elena, but you probably know someone who's fallen into the same trap. Elena was unknowingly projecting her unrealized dreams onto her children, sending the whole family on an emotional roller coaster. Carlos, the youngest, eventually rebelled. Instead of following the entrepreneurial path his mother had envisioned, he enrolled in a culinary course. The disappointment in Elena's eyes was hard to miss. But shouldn't she have been proud that her son was pursuing his true passion? It's like giving our children a map to a treasure they're not searching for. Wouldn't it make more sense to hand them a compass and let them chart their own course? Psychologist Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, reminds us that true happiness comes from using our unique strengths. But how can our children discover their strengths if they're too busy trying to live up to our expectations? Elena had her moment of clarity during a family dinner. Luis announced that he was quitting painting to join a rock band. Instead of feeling disappointment, Elena was filled with a sense of relief and pride. Her son had found his true passion. This unexpected twist teaches us a valuable lesson: when we support our children's own dreams, not only do they become happier, but the family bond strengthens as well. It's like watering a plant. When you give it what it truly needs, it will bloom beautifully on its own. The famous pediatrician Dr. Benjamin Spock once said, "Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do." Perhaps it's time we extend that trust to our children and believe in their ability to find their own way. Elena certainly did. 7. The risk of not setting boundaries. Elena, now retired, was facing a challenge familiar to many parents: feeling taken for granted. Sounds familiar? Well, brace yourself, because what Elena was about to uncover would change her life in ways she never expected. It all started when her youngest son, Carlos, asked to temporarily move back home. "It'll just be for a few months, Mom," he reassured her. With a heart full of love, Elena didn't hesitate to say yes. But those few months turned into a year, and before long Elena found herself doing everything for her 30-year-old son: cooking, cleaning, laundry. Instead of feeling like a mother, she felt like a maid. Where was the line between unconditional love and being taken advantage of? As the philosopher Khalil Gibran once wrote, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." Yet Elena, like many parents, struggled with this realization. In fact, a study from the University of Michigan revealed that 25% of retired parents experience some form of emotional or financial strain from their adult children. Surprising, isn't it? Psychologist Dr. Laura Markham explains that unconditional love doesn't mean giving without boundaries. In truth, setting limits is a profound expression of love. Who would have thought? Saying no can actually nurture growth. Elena began to realize that her constant help wasn't aiding Carlos, it was stunting his independence. Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." In trying to be the ideal mother, Elena was unintentionally stifling Carlos's growth. So what did she do? Elena had a candid conversation with Carlos. She expressed her love but made it clear that boundaries needed to be established. Carlos's reaction was surprisingly positive. He too had been feeling trapped in the dynamic but didn't know how to change it. Together they made a plan. Carlos would start contributing to household expenses and take on his own chores, while Elena would step back and give him the space he needed to grow. The result? A healthier, more balanced relationship. Elena reclaimed her independence, and Carlos gained valuable lessons in responsibility and autonomy. This experience taught Elena and us a powerful lesson: true love means setting clear boundaries. It's not about withholding support or affection, but offering it in a way that encourages growth and independence. Have you ever felt, despite your best intentions, that something wasn't quite right? The wisdom of Don Javier. Elena was about to learn that true wisdom often comes from the most unexpected places. Little did she know her neighbor, Don Javier, held an ancient secret that would forever change her perspective. Feeling weighed down by doubts and a growing disconnect with her children, she crossed the street and knocked on his door. "Don Javier, I need your help," Elena said, her voice trembling. "I feel like I'm losing touch with my kids." With a calm smile, Don Javier welcomed her inside. "You've come to the right place," he said. "Did you know the ancient Stoics had a lot to say about parenting?" Elena blinked in surprise. Stoics? What could ancient philosophers possibly teach her about modern parenting struggles? Don Javier continued, "The Stoics believed in something called love with detachment. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But think of it like holding a bird. If you squeeze too tightly, you hurt it. If you release it completely, it flies away. The key is to hold it gently, allowing it the freedom to fly." Elena listened intently. Don Javier explained that the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond to it. "Think of your children as young trees," he said. "Your role isn't to grow for them, but to create the right environment for them to grow on their own." "But how can I just let them struggle?" Elena asked. Don Javier smiled again. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." Allowing your children to face challenges is like immunizing them against life's hardships. Elena was deep in thought. "Are you saying I should stop helping them?" "Not exactly," Don Javier replied. Stoic love isn't cold or distant. It's a love that recognizes each person's individuality and responsibility. Think of it as being the wind beneath their wings rather than the pilot of their plane. Elena's mind was racing. These ideas challenged everything she thought she knew about being a mother. Don Javier continued, "Seneca once said that true wealth is living content with little. Have you ever considered that by constantly giving your children everything, you might be robbing them of the satisfaction of earning it themselves?" Memories of all the times she'd swooped in to fix her children's problems flashed through Elena's mind. Had she been unknowingly depriving them of important life lessons? "How do I start changing this?" she asked. Don Javier suggested starting with small steps. The next time your child asks for help, instead of solving the problem for them, ask, "What do you think you should do?" You'll be surprised by how capable they truly are. As Elena prepared to leave, Don Javier offered one final piece of advice. "Remember, Elena, true love isn't possessive. It's like the sun, it shines for everyone, but it doesn't demand anything in return. Elena's plan for a new beginning. After years of giving her all for her children, Elena realized she needed to make a drastic change. She came up with a plan that would transform not only her life but the lives of her entire family. Can you imagine reinventing your relationship with your grown children? Well, that's exactly what Elena set out to do. Her first step was to set clear boundaries. She decided she would no longer be the one to fix all her children's problems. As the psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself as I am, then I can change." Elena understood that by stepping back she was giving her children the chance to grow. When she shared her new approach, reactions were mixed. Louise, the artist, was confused. Anna, the lawyer, felt relieved, and Carlos, the aspiring chef, resisted. "But Mom, you've always been there for us," he protested. "I always will be," Elena responded with a gentle smile. Just in a different way, she clung to the words of Seneca, "It's not because things are difficult that we don't dare, but because we don't dare that they are difficult." Though the transition wasn't easy, Elena stood firm. There were moments of doubt, but she stayed committed to her plan. One day, Anna called in frustration after losing an important case in court. Instead of rushing to offer advice, Elena asked, "What do you think you can learn from this experience?" This simple question opened up a meaningful conversation that deepened their connection in ways Elena had never imagined. Psychologist Carol Dweck's theory of the growth mindset teaches that people unlock their true potential when they face challenges and learn from them. Elena was putting this into practice, helping her children build resilience and self-confidence. Over time, Elena began to notice subtle yet profound changes. Louise, once dependent on her for every decision, started trusting his own judgment. Carlos, to her surprise, began inviting her over for dinners he had prepared himself. "Mom, I want to give back some of what you've given me," he said one day, bringing tears to her eyes. A recent study from the University of Michigan found that young adults with empowering parents report higher levels of life satisfaction. Elena was seeing the evidence firsthand. The transformation wasn't quick or easy, but every small victory felt like a step in the right direction. A year after Elena decided to change her approach, the impact on her family was undeniable. Transformative results. The transformation within the family was unmistakable. Carlos, who had temporarily moved back in with Elena, was now thriving in his own apartment and had successfully launched a catering business. Anna, the aspiring lawyer, had discovered her true passion for psychology and was pursuing a master's degree in family therapy. Meanwhile, Louis, the previously frustrated artist, was playing in a local band that was gaining popularity. However, the changes went beyond just their professional achievements. Elena's new mindset, which focused on establishing healthy boundaries and fostering independence, had fortified family bonds in ways she had never anticipated. As psychologist Carl Rogers noted, the only learning that can significantly influence behavior is that which the individual discovers and incorporates for themselves. Elena had come to realize this truth, albeit through a challenging journey, but the results were evident. Family dinners, once tense and filled with subtle comparisons, had transformed into moments of authentic connection. At one gathering, Louis playfully remarked, "Remember when Mom insisted I'd be the next Picasso? Well, it turns out I'm more like Mick Jagger than Van Gogh, and I couldn't be happier." This new family dynamic not only enhanced their individual relationships, but also cultivated an atmosphere of mutual support. For instance, Anna began using her psychological insights to help develop a marketing strategy for Carlos's business. Elena had finally grasped the profound significance of letting go and allowing her children to chart their own paths. This realization led her to a more authentic and fulfilling approach to motherhood. A recent study from Harvard University found that young adults raised in environments that promote autonomy and responsibility are 40% more likely to report high levels of life satisfaction. Elena was witnessing these positive outcomes firsthand. Perhaps the most remarkable change was within Elena herself. She no longer felt the weight of needing to solve all her children's problems or direct their lives. Instead, she had evolved into a source of support and wisdom, someone her children sought for guidance, not for quick fixes. In her diary, she reflected, "The real gift I can give my children isn't money, property, or instant solutions. It's self-confidence, the ability to face their own challenges, and the assurance that I will always be here to support them, but not to live their lives for them. This transformation was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, intense discussions, and tears shed along the way. Yet, as psychologist Viktor Frankl famously said, when we cannot change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That is precisely what Elena and her family had achieved. Elena learned that parenting isn't about providing endless money, giving away property, or fixing every problem. It also doesn't involve giving unsolicited advice, comparing children, or having unrealistic expectations. The real gift is teaching them independence and responsibility while showering them with love within healthy boundaries. As psychologist Abraham Maslow stated, the healthiest way to raise a child is to help him develop his individuality. Consider your own family for a moment. Are you equipping your children with the tools they need to soar, or are you keeping them in a gilded cage? Remember, true love isn't about doing everything for them, but about preparing them so they can navigate life on their own. If you've made it this far, please write true love in the comments so I can recognize those who have persevered until the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this in the future. Share this video with your loved ones so they can start implementing this wisdom today, and consider supporting the channel by becoming an exclusive member.